Alrighty, welcome back to Becoming the Remnant. Today, for the first time, we have two guests on the pod, which caused some technical difficulties, but I think we got it figured out. We'll find out.
The whiz child over here figured
literally
it out.
Google. I'm like watching this British woman do this in 2008. Like her episode, her garage band thing was so like, she's like, welcome in garage band. It was so great.
Hello.
But
yes.
yeah. Also, before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the one-of-a-kind unofficial Becoming the Remnant merch that I'm wearing.
Ooh.
Thank you to Ashley Madkins for making
Yeah,
it.
that looks
Nice.
amazing.
So
It
It's
does.
literally like my new favorite sweatshirt now.
Good
I've worn
job,
it
Ashley.
literally.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so great.
How'd she do the flowers?
I guess just like embroidery. I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really great.
It's
Yeah.
cute.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Good job,
But
Ashley.
so Rob, you've been on the podcast
I
before,
have.
but let's introduce our new friend here.
Yay.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Rachel. I'm like, hi guys. I'm Mrs. Robert.
Yes, Mrs. Robert. Correct.
Mrs. Robert. Yes.
Correct.
Forever known
Yes.
as Mrs.
Forever.
Robert.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay, so today, well, before it's been a few months ago now, but I had it on my heart to have a couple on to talk about dating, and so
All right.
here you are, and so
Here
you
we
were
are.
the ones that I thought of. So
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you want to know? What
I
do
don't
the
know.
people want to know
Yeah.
about dating?
what do we
Right.
want to know? I feel like it's just like a big, and maybe it's like the season of life that I'm in, but I feel like it's a big topic in this generation because I feel like we're doing it differently than maybe other generations did before, for the good or for the bad. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
But you guys have been in youth ministry for a while,
Very long time.
you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, I'm sure. So I
We
feel like,
have.
but obviously going at this from the root of like finding a godly spouse and like dating to find a spouse, not just like dating as like the world
Right.
would, obviously.
Right.
But you look like you have a thought. Do you
Robert always has a
I
thought.
have a ton of thoughts, and honestly, it's just like I don't know where to land because there's just so many directions that we could go, and so like I'm processing which is the right one to land on. Do you have any
Okay.
thoughts as to
No,
where
not
to like
yet.
lead off?
maybe how we do it as someone who's like looking for a spouse, how we go about it, and then how we date. I don't know.
Well,
you
one
start.
thing that just immediately like kind of almost jumped up in my spirit, like as you were saying it, is I was just taken back to one time when we were at the A-frame. So this is going back like 16, 18 years ago. And I just think it's really important that when people start dating, that we just be really, really careful that we don't throw around the God card a whole lot.
Yeah, we really we saw that a lot.
We saw
Yeah.
that.
People
We have
love
seen
to.
that.
Yeah.
God told me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is someone supposed to do with that?
Right. Yeah.
You know, like God told me we're supposed to be together. I specifically remember one young man. He was in a relationship and he broke up with his girlfriend, and he came and he told me, and he said, I told her that God and I are not supposed to be not God and I.
God and I are not supposed to
Yes,
be together.
exactly.
Like, okay, then you got a lot of problems. I'm gonna let you go.
I don't know how to
a
talk
whole
to you.
different story.
You know? He said that God told him that they were not supposed to be dating, and he was just supposed to focus on the Lord. And so I remember just pulling him aside and just telling him, okay, do you understand how serious of a statement that is that you just told me? And I told him, I said, I don't want to see you in another relationship for like over a year then.
Yeah.
Because what a lot of younger people would do is like when they would be dating somebody and they didn't want to work through some of the challenges of dating somebody, they'd be like, God said we're not supposed to be together.
Yeah.
Or God said I'm not supposed to be dating. And then like a week later, they're in a new relationship. And it wasn't that God said anything, but God just kind of became their scapegoat to get out of the relationship.
Absolutely.
Or they're feeling uncomfortable, and any
Yes.
uncomfortable feeling is like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that must be God.
That must be.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
true too.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yes, and he's not an easy way out.
Right.
He's not supposed to be like the ripcord on our parachute. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel uncomfortable in here, so let me just like throw the God card on it,
Yeah.
and then that's my way out.
Yeah.
Like, even though God will deliver us from all of our troubles,
Right.
you know, I believe when it comes to dating, we just have to be really careful how we throw around God's name when it comes to relationships and make sure. And like even as parents, that's one thing we don't do with our children. Like when we comes to like discipline, and I know you wanted to talk about dating, but like we don't throw the God card around.
Yeah, we don't do that. We
Like-
don't use God.
We don't use God. He's
No.
not our scapegoat.
Right.
He's not
Yeah.
the reason why we're going to discipline you. And I don't think God should be the reason, like, that should not be like the card you throw down on the table as why you're supposed to date or why you're supposed to get out. I think you
Right.
should be able to have like conversation. Like if somebody's not vibing with you and then you throw down the God card to try to get them to vibe with you, I feel like you're low-key more manipulating them than you are actually trying to be in a godly relationship. Because if they're not in the feels, but then you throw down the God card, like they have to try to force something that's not there.
Absolutely.
You know, so I just want to encourage everybody, like, you know, I don't feel like you should do that. Like, you shouldn't use God to force someone into a relationship.
I feel like
they don't want to be
if you're in, like, even I've been in situations where, like, you get, like, you're, like, you know, hanging out with somebody new and you're both just like, I don't have peace about this. Like, I've just been like, hey, I don't really have peace about this. Do you have peace about this? And they're like, no, not really. I'm like, well, cool. Like, that's our answer.
Yeah, right.
Like, and it didn't have to be like, you know, God said. It was just like, this is not it. Like, I don't feel like this is it. You don't feel, okay, we gotta go.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so.
Yes. And I think it's important, like Rachel and I, we have two very different perspectives on dating because, and she'll share
the story.
I didn't say two different perspectives on our journey.
I thought you were talking about our story.
The tea is spilling
We
live
do
on the
have-
podcast.
We do have very different perspectives of our journey. But I mean, even before our journey, like, you know, Rachel was basically ready for like that nun life.
Oh, I was. Like,
You know what? And
Like,
it's not, as
listen.
someone who's living it, it's not a bad time.
said as someone
I'm here
who's
to let
living
you
it.
know.
I think for me, like, I never dated, but because of the way I was brought up and all of that garbage, it scared me.
Yeah.
And so that was why I never dated, was because I was like, well, I saw all the relationship garbage and I'm not doing that. That's
Right.
not for me.
Yeah,
life.
you know how people typically say like the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like for Rachel, I think she just saw the bad and the ugly.
Absolutely.
Like there was no good.
Right. Yeah.
And that very much had a way of shaping her perspective
Right.
Yeah.
on dating. So she came in a lot different than I came in.
Yeah.
I just came in and was like, I'm ready for my mate. You know, like just like, where is she, Lord?
Robert dated the town.
Whoa. Whoa. Yo.
This is so great. I'm having a great time already.
Oh,
I'm
I
having a
did
really
not
great
date
So
said
great.
town. I don't even know what
It's
town
so
we're
great.
talking about.
Which town? There's
I know,
no.
right?
Which town? I've lived
I
in
don't
3.
know.
Like, what are we talking
I don't know,
about
all
here?
3.
Huh. This is wild.
Hey guys, welcome back to Dr. Phil. Today I'm here.
Hey,
I have some pent-up anger.
anybody listening or watching it, this is why you don't go on a pod where it's 2 against 1. I'm
So
outnumbered
good.
here.
That's so great.
Okay.
No, I didn't
No.
date the
You-
town. We're
no,
gonna explore that further. Like, what is going on
It was
here?
a joke.
I know, I'm just teasing. But I feel like I was like really, really ready. But when I don't know, I feel like I do want to circle back though, because you were like, our generation's doing it different. What do you mean by that?
I was thinking about that today, honestly, in preparation for it, because I've seen a lot of like I follow this girl who does like fitness content, and she was getting her like VO2 max tested, which is basically like your like oxygen threshold, like it's how like fit you are cardiovascularly or whatever. And she was like, yeah, doing this is hard, but have you tried like dating in this generation? Like there's a lot of like memes like that, and so I'm like, why are we having a bad time? Like why are we? And I think and I was talking to somebody else about this recently too, and they were like, you know, your generation, talking about my generation, does it differently. But I think the way we like with phones and stuff, we like go to talking first. Like you'll meet somebody and then all of a sudden like it's expected that you're supposed to message all the time. Like you're supposed to be like letting this person into your life and like, oh, I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. Like, and you start like sharing emotionally like, before there's been any effort. So like, whereas like maybe 20 years ago, somebody like the guy was expected to ask the girl on a date, like you pay, like there's like effort that has to be put forth and like investment, and like I'm making effort to, because
Courtship.
right.
Yes,
and like you have to
absolutely,
see
right.
like if you even enjoy hanging out with this person, you know, because like we're putting in my opinion, we're putting the emotional intimacy before like, have I even hung out with this person? Like, do I enjoy their company? Because I feel like it used to be like, you would find out like, oh, hey, I enjoy this person's company. Like we've been out 4 or 5 times. And like, so now I'm going to start to open up about my life and things like that. Whereas we're like all up front, like, here's my life. Do you want to be part of it? But like this person hasn't put forth on both sides. I'm not just saying like the man or the woman, but there's been no like real effort put forth. Like in real life. And then like something that's really common too is like ghosting people, like where you just like stop.
Right.
So like there's no, and it doesn't cost the other person any, or the whoever ghosts, like it doesn't cost them anything to do that. Whereas like the other person was
Right.
just like so emotionally intimate, and then it's just like gotta go. But then like it used to be where you'd have to like, hey, I don't want to see you anymore, and you'd like have a conversation of why.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even that had to be like intentional.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're just like kind of buying the cart before the horse, like as that saying
Yeah.
used to, like we're just like, here's my heart, like take it or leave it. And then
Right.
people are like, oh, leave it. And I
Right.
feel like a lot of people are just getting like a lot of unnecessary heartbreak. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think along with that, like, you know, when we talk about the social media era, I forget, and forgive me for not doing my research. We'll Google it after this to make sure we're. But I believe there's a philosophy out there. I forget what it's called, and I'm just going to explain it in like super layman's terms. But like the philosophy is the more choices you have, the harder it becomes to make a decision.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one good thing about pursuing a relationship God's way.
Yeah.
Is because when you pursue a relationship God's way, the criteria that the word gives for a mate is automatically going to remove several options.
Right.
Yeah, it's really going to slim your choices down.
Yeah.
It is.
No,
It's going to
100%.
cut it down. So instead of having so many options out there to where you're so overwhelmed you can't make a decision,
Yeah.
God and his word is going to isolate and remove a lot of people you really shouldn't be with.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, then you don't have to go to like all these different social platforms to like try to find a spouse, because you immediately know, okay, this is what I'm looking for, because God has broken this down
Yeah.
for me in my heart, you know,
Yeah.
of what that criteria should be, like someone running the same direction and having the same passions and like, you know, whatever it might be. Because I feel like your generation right now, I don't know what the data is. I don't know if they're getting as married as much as maybe even like generations before. And I think it's just because there's so many options.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, well, A, I don't have to choose, and B, there's so many options, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if it's really your heart's desire to have a spouse and to be in a marriage, then you can go to God and his word, and he's going to help you break that down and isolate it so it removes a lot of the confusion. So then you will know what you are looking for.
Right.
And then also you can take those specific requests. Like for me, I had specific things that I desired. And when Rachel and I met, she just like really checked all those boxes. And it's so like, with me fellowshipping with God and growing with God, I was able to narrow it down from like this really, really broad list to something very, very specific. And then once it got something very specific, he brought that into my life.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important, like, we're not just like at a fish market, like being like,
No, yeah.
ooh, let me just look
Right.
over all
Yeah.
this ice and be like, I want that one.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to like break it down to get more precise with it, to where we're not so much just like trying stuff and seeing what works.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
there's that. We're not like cooking pasta like my family used to throw it against the wall to see if it was cooked or not. You know,
See if
you're
it
not.
sticks.
Yeah,
See if it
see if it's,
sticks.
yeah,
Yeah.
You're not just trying to throw anything out there to see what
Right.
sticks and then be like, that's the one. There's
Yeah.
got to be
Right.
like a way to break this down.
Yeah.
And if you're walking with God and going to him before it, he will help you finalize that process, not finalize that process, but like narrow it down.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, this is your heart's desire and this is what you're looking for. So then you have something very specific, and it allows you to make a more godly and wise choice when it comes to choosing your spouse, because I believe it is a very important decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I feel like that's so true with like, I didn't even think about that with social media, like just seeing everybody, and like it can feel like, and to like, even as somebody who is called to the ministry, especially like people, there's so much like, make sure you get the right one,
Right.
like, cause they could like, and I'm just
Yeah.
like,
right.
Right.
I'm scared. Like,
Yeah, it can get
like,
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, what if I don't pick the right person?
Right.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
Because I unfortunately have seen people's ministries either destroyed by their spouses or
Hindered.
their spouse is, it hindered because their spouse is not going the same way and they've got to do it by themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's just,
But also, you
It's a
can't be
time.
scared of that.
No,
either.
100%.
You know, you have to. You know God. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like.
now I'm the one being therapized. It
Yeah.
was, it was you
Sorry.
guys a second ago. No, it's great. We're going back and forth.
All right. Well,
The Dr. Phil episode. No.
We're
But
helping
no, it's
Destiny.
true. It's true.
But yeah. So it's like, I feel like if Robert would have chose someone else, and I don't know this for certain, but I know like when we first started dating, he randomly got this letter from an ex.
Not a letter.
Oh,
Yeah.
a
Oh,
letter.
she thought that out. She
Listen.
said,
She did
"Dear
figure
Robert."
it out.
Oh, she did. And she was like, God told me that we're supposed to be together.
Ruh-roh.
Right after we,
Right after Robert made that decision.
Yeah.
Like,
Ruh-roh.
yeah. And so,
she's a pastor's daughter.
yeah. So I didn't know that. But I mean, who knows? She could have hindered Robert's ministry.
Yeah.
But I feel like I do a good job, and I lift you.
You do a good job. You do a great job, babe.
So,
and yeah, there's always going to be that distraction that's going to come. Like, I really do believe, like, when you make a decision,
right.
like, even with you and the adventure you're about to go on, I know when I first started here at the church, like, I got, like, letters from other churches, like, offering me better positions with better pay. There's always going to be, like, that distraction, like, to challenge that commitment that you made, you know, and so you just have to know in your heart.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I shared a lot of that same concern that you do. Like, you know I'm called to ministry. I know where I'm supposed to go. And so, like, I want to make sure that it's right because I don't want any hindrances here.
Right.
And so I'll just say, like, I was really, like, genuinely afraid. Like, what if I choose the wrong spouse and then I'm not able to fulfill what God's asked me to fulfill. Now, what's so cool about that is, like, if we will just be honest with God and have, like, real conversations with him. Like, we always talk about this. Like, he knows every thought we're thinking anyways. We just as well talk to him about it, you know, instead of trying to hide it. And, you know, so I genuinely expressed that to God. And I remember very specifically, I was on a missions trip. Pastor Mark and I, we went to Taiwan for a week. And then we went, since we were so close to the Philippines, we just went to the Philippines. We were gone for 2 weeks in a row. And before I left, Rachel and I were like, you know, sinking into the vibes.
Okay, listen. Like, we were flirting. We were friends best friends for like 2 years. That's how it started. Yeah. But I felt one way.
I had an irrational. It wasn't that the feels weren't there. I had an unhealthy fear of marriage.
Yeah.
Because, and I tell people this all the time, and it's just the truth. Like, marriage, like, I know that I'm supposed to be working at Cornerstone, but at the end of the day, if I didn't feel like I was supposed to be here, I can leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not married to it.
Right.
You know, right? I can change anything about my life. If I don't like my house, I put it on the market, I sell it. If I don't like my car, I sell it. I can change anything about my life. But, like, for me, marriage was like one thing. Yeah. That, like, when I'm locked in, like, it's done. And that's not to throw any shade at anybody that's ever been married and divorced. You know, there's therefore no condemnation. You know, it's whatever. But, like, for me, it just it held, like, such that high place because I was like, this is, like, I truly believe from the Word of God, God's greatest representation of what this union with God looks like, because the church is called the bride of Christ. Father, the God is the Trinity. You have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I believe a marriage done right is a perfect representation of that because it's husband, wife, and God. It's a Trinity within itself, and I believe that it's such a beautiful demonstration of who God is. That's why the devil attacks it so hard. Yeah. And so there was, like, a lot of pressure, and I was like, you know, I believe I'm going to live like 90 to 120 years, and I'm like 22. If I get married now, I'm looking at 100 years of being with somebody. That's a really long time. Like, I can't just
tolerate someone.
Yeah, I can't just love this person. I got to like this person too. You know what I mean? I mean, it's got to be like, we've got to be perfect. And so I had an unhealthy, like, I won't share her side of it. We'll give her a second to talk. But I feel like she knew. And I felt like I kind of knew, but I was resistant because of the weight that came with the decision. And so, like, I needed to get away. And it just so happened that, you know, Pastor Mark and I, we went on a 2-week missions trip, like, literally on the other side of the world. I mean, just to fly to the Philippines is like 21 hours. So we stopped in Taiwan. We're in Taiwan for a week, and then we're in Philippines. And I specifically remember, okay, this is such a long story. The night before we left was a saturation service, and we were having pre-service prayer, and everyone's praying in the Spirit, and we're all in a circle at the front, and I started hearing Rachel's voice. Or not hearing Rachel's voice, hearing Rachel's name out loud. Yeah. Like, I'm praying by the Spirit. I'm praying in tongues, and I'm hearing Rachel. And it shocked me, and, like, I came out of the Spirit, and Pastor Belinda was right next to me, and I literally asked her, I said, are you hearing Rachel's name? And Pastor B, you know, she's like, no, baby. Like, you know.
She said, no, baby, we're praying in tongues.
Just as
no, baby.
Only Pastor Belinda can do, no, baby. And so, like, I was like, what the mess? Because I'm hearing it so clear, and I'm hearing it so loud. It's like the first time I heard, like, an actual audible voice, like, Rachel. And I was like, what in the world? And so, anyways, like, that Monday morning, we jump on a plane to go to Taiwan, and we're in Taiwan for a week, and then we go to the Philippines, and we're in Philippines for a week. And outside of the little room I'm staying in, like, there was, like, this little rooster den or whatever, like this chicken coop, and, like, this little rooster, like, had to be this little stud every morning at, like, 4 o'clock in the morning and just get up and, like, coo or whatever they do, roost right in my window. So, like, I'm waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We don't have to be at meetings until like 9. And so I have like 5 hours to just do nothing. So I'm like, okay, I'm awake. Let me just pray. And like I started praying, and then that's where God really like put it in my heart. Like the reason why you were hearing Rachel's name before you left is because that's who you are supposed to marry. Like this is your bride. I brought you from Colorado. I brought her from Indiana. You both met in Madison. I brought you here to do life together. And so he just dropped it in my heart, and I had to hear it that way because I was so afraid.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about God. Like he will go out of his way to confirm the things that you are supposed to be doing with your life if you will listen. I had to listen.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't listen, but he doesn't want us just going through life blindly.
Right.
He wants to reveal the steps of the righteous have been ordered by God. He's not hiding those steps from you. He wants to reveal those steps unto you.
Yeah.
But you've got to do the work of putting in the time with him. I believe when I was in the Philippines, if I would not have prayed every morning, I probably would have missed it. That was my time with God for him to bring clarity. And so when you're dating, you can't just do it naturally.
Right.
You've got to get with God and be like, is this your plan for my life?
Yeah.
You've got to put in that face time because he knows it better than your spouse. He knows it better than you.
Yeah.
And so if you'll get with your creator, the one who made you and has designed this life for you, he can really confirm some things for you. And so on that trip, God confirmed it. Rachel picked me up from the airport in the car that night at the airport. I got in. And I was like, we're supposed to be together. We're getting married. Like, I just, like, laid it down.
Not even like, let's go to dinner. We're getting married.
No. I remember,
Like-
sitting in the car at his apartment, and he was like, listen, this is happening. Like, it literally, like, just like that happened.
Because at that point, I knew.
Yeah.
And I just said, don't use the God card. You know what I mean? But at that point, like, at that point, like, I knew without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't think I said God said. I was just we're supposed to be together.
God said.
Yeah.
I think you said we're supposed to be
I feel like
together.
there's ways to say it where, like, you know, like you're talking about spiritual things, but like you don't say like, you know, you can say like I have peace or I know that this is right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Without using God's name.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. And so from that moment, we just began to, you know, date and have heaven on earth as a couple. And but we can even talk about that a little bit. But if you want to share your perspective, I will now.
My perspective
Yes,
of how we
instead of
we'd
me
love to hear
controlling
your
and
perspective.
dominating the conversation, as
Okay.
I tend to do.
Well, didn't want to date anyone. None life.
None
But
life.
when
None
I
life.
was
Hashtag none life.
but when I was living with you guys, so
Rachel lived with us for those that didn't know. When I was
lived with-
a small child,
you were so little. How
Yes.
old were you? Like 3?
3 or 4,
Yeah, you're little.
And Destiny was our flower girl on our wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was.
And I
So it's
cried
adorbs.
going down the aisle a little bit because I told them I was not ready. It was my nanny and my mom's mom and Sandy McCarley
Right.
that were there with me. And I was like, wait, guys, I'm not ready. But like we had to go because it was the moment.
Right.
And then they
It's the
just, I
moment.
remember, I will never forget this. I remember those double doors at the A-frame
Yes,
being like
yes,
the rust
yes,
open.
yes.
And I was thinking like, what part of I'm not ready like was not, like, I'm like, yeah,
What was not heard
like
here?
I said I'm not ready. And so
I'm
I
not
was
ready.
just like, all right. I'm like swallowing my tears. I think I got them swallowed by
Aw.
like the third row.
sweet.
But yeah, I was their flower girl. Trying not to ruin the wedding with my
That's so
crying.
sweet.
But
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that you were.
yeah, it was
I
really
didn't know that.
stressful.
Girl, that was a stressful night for everybody.
It was
Oh,
stressful.
yeah.
It was. I was honored to do it, but it was really because they got me ready. I remember in that little bathroom. They're like trying to
Yes,
put that
right.
bathroom was tiny.
Yeah.
And they're like trying to
Oh,
put
the
this,
bathroom in the foyer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're
that
trying to
bathroom
put
was
this dress on
tiny.
me, and I'm like having a meltdown, and like I remember it very clearly for
That's
being
amazing.
such a small
That's
child.
so awful.
Glad our wedding day could give you such
Right,
fun,
such
wonderful
trauma,
memories.
Such anxiety.
Yeah.
Sorry, Des.
No, it was great. Glad to do it. I was gonna say would do it again, but would be
Right, no,
just
we're not
weird
doing that
vibes.
again,
Yeah,
no.
because I'm a whole almost 30 grown woman, so let's not do it again. But anyways, we're really digressing.
Right,
So
we
Rachel's
really
side
are.
of the
So
story
anyway,
didn't want to
so-
date anybody. Was
right.
living with
living
us.
with you
None
guys,
life.
and
Yeah.
your dad, Pastor Mark, just called your mom and was like, "Hey, something's going on with the plane. Like they don't know."
Different mission trip.
Yes, this
We're
was
on our way to
different.
Brazil.
Sure. I think it was Brazil, right?
Yeah, we were on our way to Brazil.
And so your mom hung up the phone and she was like, "Oh my goodness, we have to pray." And so she's like calling other people to pray and stuff. And so I was like, "Okay." So I went in the little guest room and I was
Yes.
praying and stuff.
I know the very one.
Yes. And so when I started praying, I felt like the Lord in that moment was like, "You're going to marry Robert." And I was like,
Hey.
"No." Nope. That wrong connection. Bad
Wrong
connection.
number.
Wrong number. This no. And so he just kept saying it over and over and over again. I was like, "No."
Ah.
No.
I don't want to do this.
No.
But then, like, honestly, it grew from there.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't want to, and it's been the best thing ever, honestly. Even though I didn't want it, the Lord was like, "You do want this." So
He knows best.
He really does, because I don't know what I would do without you.
Same.
So.
She had written off men, but sadly I could not be written
Oh my
off.
gosh. And.
Well, guys, that's fucking
Right.
The Lord
great.
helped me out with that one, and so I appreciate you.
Okay, so I guess we'll kind of maybe like follow y'all's testimony. So then once like you're in the relationship, I feel like it's difficult to now these days because like so much of sexual sin has been kind of like normalized, especially in our culture.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, where the lines are, like, especially when you're, you know, when you're teenagers, it's one thing because hopefully you have your parents, you know, kind of being like, hey, don't do this.
Right.
But then when you're young adults, it's like, well, nobody's like
No one's
calling
babysitting
and checking,
you.
and you have to
Right.
make sure that you,
Right.
you know, are keeping those boundaries for yourself. So I guess maybe we'll get into that. Like, how do we, even if you do know, like, this is the person that I'm going to marry, you know, how do we keep purity in that relationship?
Oof.
I just think you have to value God above everything.
Yeah.
That is like step one in the relationship. Listen, we value God in this home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But God above all else.
Yeah.
To start.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is like, you know, if somebody is walking with God before they're in a relationship, then they've probably already choose to abstain from that.
Right.
At least we would hope, right?
Hopefully.
So like when you get into a relationship, you've already been living that way anyways. Why would it change just because you're now dating somebody?
Yeah.
Like the moral compass that you've been living by and the standard that you've been holding to yourself outside of relationships should also continue within the relationship. And so I feel like as long as you have that standard, Rachel and I kind of live by something. I don't know if she remembers this or not, but we've like made up our minds, like we're going to go ahead and answer the hard questions before the hard questions show up. So that way we know,
Absolutely.
like in that moment, it's already easier to make
Yeah,
a
that's good.
decision. So like if I've already made up my mind about sex, like before I have the opportunity to have sex,
Yeah.
then it makes it easier to make the right decision when that moment shows
Yeah,
up.
absolutely.
And so like we knew that we weren't going to do that until marriage. And
Right.
since we had, and then communication is also
Right.
really, really key. And like we always tell people, like when it comes to like being like friends, like if we just take it outside of relationships, like if you have a friend and like they don't support you in your relationship with God, they don't support you going to church, they're not pushing you closer to God, then I'm not sure how great of a friend they are anyways.
Right.
So if you're in a relationship and you're dating somebody and you're like, hey, I really feel like I'm not supposed to have sex until I get married, it's just not a line I'm going to cross, but they're constantly like putting on pressure to cross that
Bye.
line.
Yeah, right.
We need to
yeah,
recognize the red
yes,
flags.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Right? Because if they're asking us to make that compromise with this, what else in life are they going to ask us to
Especially as a
compromise?
woman, if a man is doing that, like he's supposed to be leading
That's
you
right.
in purity.
Absolutely.
So if he's the one being like,
Yeah.
so, but what if we just to
Yeah.
the curb,
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
to the curb, to
Yes.
the whole curb.
Yes.
Yeah, and
right.
and I feel like sometimes people get so caught up, like, well, if I let this fish go, I'll never have another one.
Yeah,
That is a lie.
And it is a lie.
Yeah.
And we just can't fall into the trap of that. Like, I feel like sometimes people do, like, on, you know, my side of it, like so afraid to get married, but I feel like there's other people that are so afraid to be alone
yeah,
that they're willing to not
Yeah.
recognize those
Yeah.
red flags. And like, it could be like glaring in front of them, but they'll just like overlook it because they're so afraid of losing the relationship they're in. And like, anytime we're being motivated by fear, we're not being motivated by
Yeah.
God.
yeah.
Or I think even too, people will think that there's like only one person for them. That like
Right.
God's got only like one
Yeah.
person, and like sure there are people that like. Especially if you have things to do for God, like there are, you know, people that would work maybe better or not as
Yep.
well,
Right.
but like there's still an element of free will and choice in it. And just
Yep.
because like one situation goes wrong, like doesn't mean that like the Lord, I've seen the Lord restore marriage and restore relationship in some of the wildest circumstances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like he's always got
Yeah.
something that he can.
It's always a ram in the thicket.
Yeah.
Always.
And you just got to know, I mean, like, you know, just to go back to like after Rachel and I got serious after that trip and then I got that letter, this was a girl that like, you know, and I'm not trying to put her on blast. She was trying to figure out her life. I was trying to figure out mine, but we were like low key dating at Rhema. And like, she was planning on moving down here, like and we were going to do ministry together. And then like the last week of Rhema, she's like, we're not supposed to be together. And like, she called it off. And I remember just going back to Colorado. I went back to Colorado for my brother's wedding. I was like, really thought this was the right one. Her parents are pastors. My parents are pastors.
Yeah.
This just makes sense.
Seemed good on paper.
You know, we're good on paper. They're from Montana. We're from Colorado. The states are right next to each other. It's making it more specific as to who this person is, but you know,
Her name is.
yeah, the name is.
She lives
on blast, live on the podcast.
And so I was really confused by that. And then like when I got that letter, it was a challenging time because like your mind is like just trying to forget what was and now in the presence. But like I knew so in my heart that Rachel was the right woman for me. And it kind of goes to saying what you were saying, like there could be multiple people, but you have other people's wills that are involved in it. You know what I mean? And so I think if like maybe you're in a relationship and it didn't work out because someone else closed that door, that doesn't mean that it's over for you.
Right. Or God's never gonna like, the whole plan for your life is ruined.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's right. Like when her and I broke up, it would have been very easy to be like, well, that was the one. I guess I'm never going to get married, you know, but that's not, you know, God had a better plan. God's plan, like nothing catches him by surprise. He knew that was going to happen, and he knew that Rachel was coming from Indiana to be here. And you just have to trust God.
Yeah.
And like things don't always work out the way that we think they're going to work out. And I think in those moments, it's an opportunity to just lean back on your faith and say, okay, I thought this was it, but clearly I had a misunderstanding, but this is still a desire of my heart. And if it's a desire of your heart, God will always make a way, and he always has a plan. Always.
Yeah.
Nothing catches him off guard.
Even in my life, like I've come out of situations like that, you know, where I thought it was the right one, and the Lord just like, I'm like, okay, Lord, like I'm a little confused right now. And he's just literally, there was one time specifically, he was like, nothing has changed in your life. Like, it was just to me like, okay, we're just still we're still going. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Like, it was his way of basically being like, we're good. Like, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like people do get in this, like, what am I going to do now? Like, but then I feel like that can kind of show where, like, were you idolizing this person that you think, like, without them, you know, like, well, now my whole life is, like, there's nothing God can do with my life.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's one of those things like, oh my goodness, I was going to say something and it just jumped out of
Ooh,
my,
I hate that.
tragic. Your turn.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what you were going to say.
Reach up and grab it. Catch it.
Reach up and grab it. Man, it was really good.
Was it about the girl from Montana?
No. Yo. Why? Wow.
Shout out Montana girl.
Shout
Bless her.
out.
Bless her.
Thanks
bless
for
her. I
Robert.
don't know
Thanks for
what-
breaking up with him.
Oh my gosh. My goodness. Yeah.
No,
we
period.
almost had a spit take.
Yeah,
there.
we almost did.
That would have been
Period.
great. No, I tell people sometimes, like, you know, like, I think I've said this in school of ministry before, but like, if your desire is to be married, like, lots of times it's important just to like look internally and be like, am I ready for my spouse?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Have I done, because lots of times people want to get married, but like if God sends them their spouse and they get married, they're going to destroy it because they're not ready for marriage.
Right.
Absolutely. I feel like, if we would have started dating when I wanted to, I feel like it would have been a huge train wreck. Just because I was not mature enough yet.
Yeah.
I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
So.
And so I think it's important, you know, to make sure that we have said, okay, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to work on Robert as much as I need to work on Robert to
absolutely.
make sure that when Rachel shows up, I'm ready for her.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for the promise. And there's so many times we even see it in the Bible, like they weren't. I mean, you can see it in Exodus chapter, I forget where it is, but when God's bringing them out of Egypt, like he has to take them around instead of just taking them direct. And the reason he says so is because you're not ready.
Yeah.
And if you come up against anything, any kind of adversity, he says anything you come up against, you're going to run back to Egypt.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, you do come up against adversity in a marriage.
Right. 100%.
100%.
It's not just, you know, all chill and butterflies. There's going to be stuff that it's two individual people with two individual wills.
Yeah.
In our particular case, two very strong-willed people. You know, one with a strong will and who's loud, and one with a strong will who's stubborn. And it's like, you know,
true.
that is not always a recipe for like just, you know, even though we do have heaven on earth, and we can talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit. I think it's just like making sure you're ready for the promised land.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, okay, what do I have to do internally to make sure that when my spouse shows up, I can treat them as the son of God or the daughter of God that they are.
Yeah.
And I can treat them as the spouse that I need to, you know, I can be the person that they need. I can be their person, and I can be, because we tell people in marriage counseling all the time, it doesn't take 2 half people to make one whole marriage. It takes 2 whole people to make one whole marriage. And so I have to be a whole person. And I feel like sometimes people are like, where's my mate? And they're asking God for their spouse, my spouse, my spouse, my spouse. And God is like, you're not even a whole person yet.
Yeah.
Like, become a whole person, and then I will bring you the promise, you know? It's kind of like blessing someone with the lottery if they don't even know how to manage money and they're not a tither or a giver. Like, that's just going to wreck your life. And so God's not in the life-wrecking business.
Yeah.
And so it's important to see that.
I think a lot of that, too, though, is letting the Lord, like, heal stuff in you and having, like, a lot of, like, uncomfortable times with the Lord that a lot of people are not willing to have.
Yeah.
Like, if you know, like, I deal with X, Y, and Z, or I have commitment issues, or I have da-da-da. Like, it is your responsibility to you heal that with the Lord. Because then, like, if he brings that person, like, you very well could mess it up. And then obviously, like I said, you know, he can bring somebody else around when you have fixed it. But, like, how much better is it to fix it now when you're a single person?
Absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of people don't want to have those moments of intimacy with the Lord because it's messy and it's ugly, and he'll bring up stuff and you're like, ooh, didn't want to talk about that, but I guess I have to. And like, so I feel like a lot of people are just like not, they say they are willing to do that work, but like when it comes down to it, you know, I don't know if a lot of times they are. So
yeah, and just as you're saying it, like, I mean, the more mess you have with God in that regard, the cleaner marriage you'll have. You know, the more we can work through this hurt and this baggage and the trauma that I've experienced with him, then the easier it's going to be with my spouse.
Right, 100%.
And so, and it's important to understand, like, our spouse is not the healer of the brokenhearted.
Absolutely.
100%.
Like, you can't look to people to fix what other people have broken. You can only look to God. Only God is the healer of that. And so I think when we let God, and that also does a wonderful thing too, because it allows God to take the rightful place of being on the throne of your heart.
Absolutely.
And then you're not, you know, like Rachel, she went through some stuff. And if I would have been the one that fixed that, then there would have been that temptation to where I become the God of her life.
Right.
I think too, I would have leaned on you more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a heavy burden for you to take on.
Because then you're constantly looking to him to be perfect. And, you know.
And to make me happy and to fulfill something in my heart that he could never fulfill.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And so it allows people to, you know.
It gets your priorities straight.
Yes. Yes. And making sure that, like, you know, even though Rachel and I are together and we're so grateful for each other, we never pursue one another before we pursue God. Like, God is our pursuit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like if that doesn't happen, then we end up putting somebody else on the throne of our heart who's not supposed to be there. And so all this stuff is just so important when it comes to finding the right person, finding your person, and, you know, making sure that you do have a healthy whole marriage. And you can't have a healthy whole marriage if it's two unhealthy people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we got to go to God and be like, help me. And he will.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wanted to circle back to, we were on boundaries before. We'll circle back. This is just like our miscellaneous thoughts, but it's great. It's fantastic. No, it's great. But I feel like one important thing, or at least what I've noticed is important, is like even avoiding like the appearance of evil, like not being at somebody's, you know, house, which I know y'all have a little story, but we'll let you share it if you want to, obviously. But if you don't, we can cut that out. But like, I follow somebody, I follow this couple, and they like just recently got married. They're young, and he like lived at their future home before she did. And like there was a couple clips where like it was like a day in the life with us, and she like was there at like their future house, and she was like, she recorded a video. She's like, I want to talk about this because I want to be clear, like Ryan and I do not live together. Like, he's there, like I go over in the morning and we run together, but like I want to be very clear, we're not living together. Like, we believe that's wrong, that's sin. And like I responded and I was like, thank you for posting this, because like she was like going above board to be like, you know, like out of her way to be like, we're doing this above board. And like I feel like that's so important.
It is.
Because like if you can look at somebody and if you have questions, like, well, are they, like, it seems like they might be. To me, it's like, I mean, not that everybody should be like nosy in people's lives. But you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's important as believers to look different.
Absolutely.
So, thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're just called to honor God.
Yeah.
You know, and there's many ways to do that. We know Proverbs 3:9 tells us to honor him with the first fruits of our income. We honor God with our wealth. We're supposed to honor God with our marriages.
Yeah.
We're supposed to honor God with our relationships. Like Rachel and I are parents. We're supposed to honor God in the way we parent.
Yeah.
We all have careers. We're supposed to honor God in how we do handle ourselves at our career. Every facet of your life, you should be honoring God. And it dishonors God if, you know, you're about to be married, but yet you're doing marital acts before marriage.
Right.
And I believe that God is very clear about that in his word. And so, you know, I think just even avoiding the appearance of evil is important because you don't want to give people the wrong idea as
Right.
to what a godly marriage looks like and a godly relationship even before marriage looks like. I know Rachel and I went out of our way. We had a similar situation of this couple you're talking about. She moved into our house before we were married, and I moved in with Pav and Angie. And I lived with them for what, 3 months before we got married?
I don't know. Maybe 6
And,
months. I don't know.
And somebody did that with us before they got married, just because we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I know when Rachel and I were first, like, you know, kind of getting into each other, like Pav
We
and I.
we were friends. We weren't even dating.
Yeah. We weren't even dating yet, but Pav and I were roommates.
yeah.
And Rachel fell asleep on our couch, and Pav and I were playing Sega Genesis. And it was like, how late was it?
I don't know. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Woof.
It was late.
It was really late.
And your mom called me.
Good old Rhonda.
Hey, new youth pastor
and
that we
she-
just hired.
Right.
6
Get
months
into
ago.
that.
She's like, have you seen Rachel, our roommate? And I was like, she's actually asleep on my couch. And I remember the next day, I got called into the principal's office. And your mom, Pastor Rhonda, she was like, you cannot do this.
Right.
And she was like, I know that nothing happened. I mean, Pav and I were just playing video games. It was very, you know, there was nothing going on.
Right.
But it did give that.
Oh, it
Yeah.
definitely gave the
Like a
appearance.
girl
Yeah.
is leaving
Right.
a youth pastor's apartment at 4
4
in the
o'clock
morning.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, this does not look great, you
Yeah.
know? And I think one thing that we have to understand, like as Christians, as disciples, as believers, as godly people, we may not acknowledge this, but people are watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
And especially like as someone who's in youth ministry.
Yes.
I mean, now I kind of am
Right.
too, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
if teenagers see that, they're gonna be like, okay, cool, like me too.
Yeah,
Like, you know, they
right,
don't
right.
even. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And I feel like it's just one of those things. It's like, you know, and people are so, we've gotten really good in like this day and age where we just make everything not really that big of a deal.
Right.
But it is a big deal. You know, and I think we have to get away from the opinions of men, and we're more concerned about the opinion of God.
Absolutely.
And like away from people's truth and being like, what is God's truth? Like,
Yeah.
what is the truth of God's word? And that determines how I live my life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if it's the very appearance of evil, the Bible tells us to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Rachel and I, we had to work on that before we were married. Because we had lots of opportunities to put ourselves in those situations. And again, we just made the hard decision before we got to the hard decision.
Yeah.
And then it was an easy decision when we got there. And so just making sure that we were going to put in protective measures that kept us, and, you know, having good people around you that can hold you accountable, like our pastors, our friends, we're all godly friends running the same direction that we were running. And so having people around you, you know, that, I mean, Pav would have never said this, but like, it's getting late. You kids need to split up, you know, but
Yeah.
just
I
having
feel like
people.
Pav would have said something
Yeah,
like
Pav
that.
probably
No,
would've
Pav,
said
that's
stuff
so
like-
Pav.
Shout out to Pav.
I'm like, Pav knows no. Pav has no, was it social anxiety?
Right.
Social anxiety is scared of Pav. Like, Pav has no. Pav will just be like, let me tell you. It's so great.
I think we all need that too. We need
Yeah.
people in our lives
Yeah.
that can kind of like call us,
No, straight up.
you know, and be like, hey, you know, I noticed this. I want
Yeah.
to bring it to your attention.
Right.
Not because I'm trying to call you out, but I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
You know, having trusted people. And so I think we just live in a time and an age where like sexual immorality is like taken very casually.
Yeah, it's just like,
It's
well,
not
of
a
course,
big deal to
you
people.
would, like, of course.
Yes. But it's like, and you know, people preach that like lots of times, like, well, sin is sin. It's all the same. But the Bible tells us that sexual immorality is not the same as other
Yeah.
sins because it's a sin against your own body.
Yeah.
And so like it does have this like almost like this hierarchy of sin, and like sexual immorality is like at the top. And so we just have to be sure that we protect our temple and
Yeah.
that we're not doing anything that would be dishonoring before this wonderful God that we serve.
And I feel like too, it can serve as a witness to other people, because if you like are with other people who like are not doing it the same way, they're gonna be like, well, why don't you live with your fiance? 'Cause like, they're your fiance. Why would you not? You're like, well, actually, like, let me tell you why that I believe that that's not something I should do. So because I feel like if we do look like the world, then it's like, well, how are you different? You know what I mean? Like we lose that witness that like something's different about you. So.
And I just feel like it's one of those things, like, and people might think that this is silly, but I just don't think it is. Like, if there's any area that we're willing to compromise in our lives, then that just means we're going to compromise somewhere else in the future. So it's like, we got to be like, I'm not doing this at all. And just choosing to do things. There's always benefits to doing things God's way. And it's like, seems like there's always destruction to doing things my way. And so I just want to choose God's way in all things, so that way I can reap the benefits of doing it God's way.
And I feel like too, like if you do start a relationship, like having that conversation at the beginning, like what are we okay with? What is a no? What is a yes? Like for us, like individually, even in this relationship, like I know some people that even like saved their first kiss for marriage, and that was something that they wanted to do, and that was what they did, and that was what they agreed upon. And so like just going in with like, for us, like these are the boundaries, we will not cross them. And even like if you feel like you need to bring a friend in on that, like, hey, this is what we've agreed on, like if you see us doing something that's not like, call us out. So
and if you can't have that talk with that person, then they're not your person.
100%.
And it's like,
and if they're not on the same page, they're like, well, like I want to go further than that into stuff that you know is sin, like again,
out.
Bye.
I feel like we make it more complicated than it actually is sometimes. You know, if I felt like I couldn't tell Rachel exactly where I was, then it's probably not my wife. You know, if I can't communicate exactly how I'm feeling, exactly what I'm thinking, exactly what's going on in my spirit and in my mind, if I can't communicate that to this person, then they're just not my person. You know, if there's something you feel like you can't tell that, well, then I think it's pretty simple. Like to find this stuff out. We complicate it. I feel like.
Absolutely.
You know, because we do have that desire. We do have that desire for intimacy. We do have that desire for relationship. We do have that desire for closeness, and that's not bad. God is the one that put that into us. And that's good. But at the same time, it all has to be done in His time and has to be done His way, and then it will be heaven on earth, because we believe that a marriage should be heaven on earth. You know?
I feel like we try to like shave people's edges to like fit them into the, but like even I've been guilty of that, I'll be honest. Like I'm like, well, like there's a lot of potential over here and like we're just gonna, this part, like we can work on that part, but like they're like, they'll get there, but the potential you see in them is what you would do in their situation. And I was like, oh, well, that's disgustingly clear. So, but like, I feel like, especially as women, like we'll see a guy and we're like, oh, like he's got so much potential, like it'll be great, like I can fix him, like, you know. But like if that person is not like ready to take hands with you immediately and like be running after Jesus with you at the same speed that you are, like you said, like if you feel like there's things that you can't like communicate to them, or that they wouldn't understand, or like where you're at in your like spirit and your soul, like you know, are they your, you know, I don't think they are. So
I mean, I agree. And it's I think some of this stuff, again, I think it's pretty straightforward. And I feel like we complicate it. And I feel like we complicate it because there's things that we want. And it's like, you know, I want to be able to hold hands with someone. So let me just go ahead and not be concerned about all those red flags that I'm seeing, because all of a sudden, like, my desire becomes more important than like the red flags that I'm seeing.
Or you think that they'll like fix it later. You're like, oh, this will fall off of them. Like, you know, it'll be great. We'll work it out. But.
Yeah. I mean, you know, our marriage is not supposed to be like a beat up car we found where we're going to restore, like, you know what I mean? Like, I need you to be a complete person. Like, and when I say that, I mean, there's always going to be things that we're going to be working on, obviously. Like Rachel and I are still working on stuff as individuals.
No, for sure. Nobody will ever be perfect.
No one's ever going to be perfect, but I see them making like progress, and like they've dealt with like the big things.
Absolutely.
You know, like, let's just use a crazy example. Like, you're not going to go date somebody who's not born again.
I have, but not again.
But this
I said you're not
destiny.
going to.
This is current destiny with never.
This is
Right, because you're going to be like, well, that's not a project that I'm supposed to work on.
Right.
Yeah.
To like
That's not
get
your
my.
I saw this
responsibility.
reel the other day. Let me stop and say this. I saw this reel the other day. This lady was in a grocery store, and this guy asked for her number. And he goes, hey girl, can I get your number? And she goes, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I was like, yeah, like period. And
What did he say?
He was like, well, I kind of grew up in church. And like, she's like, you grew up in church. Do you have a personal relationship? Like, she's just like repeating her question.
That's
and then she's like, I don't
amazing.
think you want my number. And I was like, period.
Yes, that's
like,
so good.
Yeah, that's the entryway. It's like,
Yes.
do you have a
Absolutely.
personal relationship
Yes.
with Jesus Christ?
That is your line.
If not,
now.
you do not need my number.
That is your
Yeah.
line. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that we just don't compromise.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, oh wow, she's really pretty. Is she saved? No. Yeah, but she's really pretty. Or like,
Then
he's
no.
really cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just
Right.
people, we do that all the time, and I feel like, you know, we shouldn't compromise. Like, if somebody isn't born again, then let's get them born again. But I'm not going to do it through marriage.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Right.
not like.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want to be running the same way. You know, now, again, there's therefore no condemnation if somebody got married before they were saved and then you got saved afterwards. That's fantastic.
Right.
We're just talking about, like, you know, we've seen a lot of believers compromise because they wanted intimacy
Right.
Yeah.
and it didn't work out well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to stick to the standard, the moral standard that God's word teaches if you're going to have what God's word's promised you're going to have.
Yeah.
And he's promised you that your marriage will be heaven on earth, but you got to do it his way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like all things in life. If you don't do it God's way, I believe it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah.
And so, amen.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Boo.
I don't know. You're looking at me like I should.
I just don't know. You got so much
I-
wisdom in there.
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Let the wisdom out.
I know,
No, no,
right?
no.
Let the wisdom out.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, you could go on for hours talking about
Yeah, you
relationships.
You really
Yeah.
should.
Like, you know, and so, but I will say, like, if you, I was thinking about this while we were talking towards the end. If there's somebody that's single and they're listening, I would get alone with the Lord, and I would kind of like make a list, and not to go to like friends and be like, but I write down what you want.
Oh, the pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pros and cons. But write down what you want. Write down what you want and
Yeah.
be like, this is what I'm looking for in my spouse. And don't let it be all physical attributes, but what are you looking for spiritually? What are you looking
Right.
for in maturity? What are you looking for? You know, just make a list and just like begin to take that and hold it up before the Lord. And, you know, one of the things that I really desired is I was like, I just want someone to do life with. Like, I want to be able to go to like a church service. And then when we're on the way home, we can like talk about how awesome it was and the things
Yeah.
we got. And so like, that was one of the things on my list. Like, I want somebody who loves spiritual things. Like, and so just, I would put that down because like lots of times we're like, Lord, I want a spouse. And he's like, okay, what do you want a spouse? I want a spouse. Like, go to him with some specific, you know, request. And then I believe he'll bring you exactly what your heart desires.
Amen.
Yep. That's it.
Amen.
All right. Well,
All right.
thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Listening, whatever you do. And we'll catch you on the next
Yeah.
one. Bye.